It's good to be a quarterback. Just ask 6 of the last 7 #1 overall picks. Trevor Lawrence just became the 4th straight quarterback selected #1 overall. The last player to be taken #1 wasn't a quarterback, and that was, or the one that wasn't a quarterback was Myles Garrett in 2017, but he's the one. All right, so the quarterbacks have dominated recent drafts, including 5 of the top 15 picks last week. That was crazy. Todd McShay gets no days off. Back with us again as he sets his sights on 2022 with a way too early mock draft. So, Todd, should we expect to see 3 QBs off the board at the top of the draft next year again?
So playing quarterback at University of Richmond, 1AA,
I'm sorry.
FCS doesn't count?
I forgot.
No,
You're a quarterback.
I got it.
I thought you were a wide receiver. Just kidding.
It doesn't count.
All right, run us through.
You haven't seen me run.
Yeah, exactly. Run us through your top
Cincinnati.
5. Yeah.
Cincinnati, and I didn't make this draft order up, so call somebody else and get mad at them. But Cincinnati, I have at 5, taking Zion Nelson, offensive tackle from Miami. He's a 6'5", 316-pounder. Didn't give up a sack the entire last season. Really improved from his sophomore to his junior year, and I expect him to continue to improve in that area. And I think this year we're going to see more offensive and defensive linemen early in the draft. Number 4, I've got the New York Jets coming back and taking another offensive lineman, Charles Cross, the offensive tackle from Mississippi State. Now, Mekhi Becton was the first-round pick 2 years ago. This past draft, we saw obviously Joe Douglas, the general manager, moving up for Elijah Vera Tucker, move him inside the guard, and now you get Cross on the opposite side to protect the investment in Zach Wilson. Then at number 3, I just went value here. I just had to get this guy off the board. Derek Stingley, the cornerback from LSU. Outside of the quarterbacks, you could make an argument that he's going to be the best prospect in this entire class. He didn't play quite as well in 2020 as he did in 2019 when he had 6 interceptions. But this guy, he might get the highest cornerback grade that I've given in a long time. I just love his tape outside of when he's playing Devontae Smith against Alabama. Then Kedon Slovis, the Detroit Lions at number 2. There are other quarterbacks. I know we can get in an argument later. But Slovis, I just like the way he carries himself. I like the ability to extend plays inside the pocket and throw on the move. Just watch that Arizona State tape from a year ago, the way he drives them back and the ball placement that he has. I think Slovis is very underrated. And then finally, number 1, they stuck me with Houston here. Sorry, Texans fans. But Kayvon Thibodeaux, the defensive end, I think he's got a chance to be a star. He could be the first overall pick. He's that good. 6'5", 250 pounds. He's long, he's athletic, and he has some power in terms of the speed to power move that you need as a pass rusher. So Thibodeaux could be a very high pick after a year where we didn't have, Laura, very many edge rushers come off the board in the first half of the first round.
Yeah, and we're looking here at the top 10 picks of your way too early 2022 mock draft. 3 offensive linemen coming off the board in the top 10. The second quarterback, you were saying we could have an argument about quarterbacks. We may do it in a second here. You got Sam Howell out of North Carolina landing at the Eagles at 7 overall. Again, Todd didn't make this order, by the way, so he said you'd have to talk to somebody else for that. But first, Kedon Slovis heading to Detroit with the 2nd overall pick. Let's bring Key in here. Of course, we've got a former Trojan on the set with us who can talk about this. And you've watched a lot of Kedon Slovis. I actually covered him once in college as well. Really was impressed with him. He's a great young man, great leader. But what do you think, Key? Would he be the first quarterback off the board for you?
I mean, I know it's Todd's deal, and I feel bad.
This ought to be good.
Saying, no, I don't think he'll be the first quarterback off the board, and he's a Trojan. He's a starter by default. JT Daniels would have still been the starter at USC had he not gotten hurt. He got hurt, and I've watched Kedon Slovis, and I think he's great. I think he works well within that system. On top of that, he loses 2 of his top receivers from a year ago in St. Brown as well as Tyler Vaughn. So when you look at it, what is USC truly really going to be? Or are they going to allow him to throw the ball 50 times a game like he's been doing? I mean, completion percentage is pretty good. Touchdown to interception is pretty good, but I don't think he'll be the second pick of the draft, and it's too early, Todd. You know and I know that.
Yes, I mean, he completed 70% of his throws the last 2 years, which is 7th highest in the FBS. Listen, if you recruited better at USC, Key, I think you would see what I'm seeing in this guy. But in all honesty, I think Spencer Rattler is probably the most talented quarterback in this class coming out of Oklahoma. He just needs to be more consistent. But if he plays great this year, and everything tells you that Lincoln Riley's going to wind up developing him very well, then he could be the first overall pick when we're back here next year.
Yeah, Todd, I mean, one thing that Lincoln Riley hadn't been able to do is really develop a quarterback because he's had these one-and-done quarterbacks over the last couple years. That was all Key's fault that USC hadn't done as well over the last few years. Let's bring in an LSU guy who has certainly had a lot to brag about recently. Ryan Clark joining the show now. RC, so glad to have you here. And let's talk about Derek Stingley Jr. because I got to tell you, I talked to some people at LSU, and this was even last year. They said this guy might have a chance to be the best cornerback ever. Cornerback, this is like DBU to some people, to ever come out of LSU. How good is Derek Stingley Jr. in your mind?
I'll just give you a quick story. He was an early enrollee, so he actually got to go to bowl practice entering his freshman year. He was 17 years old, and Dave Aranda, who was the defensive coordinator at the time, said publicly that Derek Stingley was the best cornerback on the team at the time, and that's with having first-round draft picks, second-round draft picks on the team. That's how talented this kid is. Has 6 interceptions as a freshman. Last year was a bit of a down year. Took sick right before the first game, but when Jeffrey Okudah was drafted number 3 overall 2 years ago by the Detroit Lions, I was talking to some coaches at the Combine at the time, and I said it, and they agreed with me that what they had seen, and from what we'd seen from Derek Stingley, that he would have been the number 1 cornerback drafted in that draft. And he was 18 years old at the time, Laura. And I think after having last year, having some injury, suffering through a little bit of an inconsistent year, he understands what this year means.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.